That taste isn't metal. It's freedom, I whispered, as Lydia's spoon froze inches from her lips. I'd switched our bowls, my vitamin-laced soup now cooling in front of her, and watched terror bloom beneath her flawless smile. 20 minutes later, the lab confirmed it. Digitalis, slow-motion homicide. Then the second betrayal hit, my partner forging my signature to seize the firm the moment my heart failed. Betrayal gutted me, but numbers never lie and hidden cameras never blink. I'd just turned from target to hunter, and someone's empire was about to collapse. My name is Michael Aldridge, and I'm 40 years old. I run a small-town CPA firm in Cedar Falls, Indiana, where my days revolve around tax forms and client meetings. The Sunday soup tradition started 12 years ago, when my wife Lydia Collins Aldridge and I were newlyweds. Chicken noodle with rosemary from our garden, steam curling against frosted kitchen windows, while our antique mantel clock ticks steadily. Those dinners have grown quieter lately. Lydia's smile tightens when I ask about her weekend wellness retreats, and her credit card statements show mysterious gaps that my accountant's eye can't miss. My fingers drummed against the hidden filing cabinet where I keep duplicates of every household document. The truth leaves fingerprints in the numbers. But let me start from the beginning. I'm going to grab some bread, Lydia said, setting down her spoon. You want butter with yours? Sure, I answered, watching her auburn hair catch the kitchen light as she stood. My wife moved with that same practiced grace she'd had since our bookkeeping night classes where we'd met. Back then, I'd been stunned someone so striking would notice me. Now, 12 years in, I noticed things about her instead, like how she'd started adding vitamins to my soup every Sunday for the past month. As soon as the pantry door clicked behind her, I leaned forward. The soup bowls sat identically on our placemats, hers untouched, mine with 2 spoonfuls already gone. I studied the surface of my remaining soup, noticing a faint fizz where drops had hit the broth, leaving tiny bubbles that shouldn't be there. The memory of last Tuesday's doctor visit flashed through my mind. Your heart rate is unusually slow, Mike, Dr. Keller had said, frowning at his stethoscope. Any changes in medication? New supplements? I'd mentioned Lydia's health kick, the vitamins she'd been crushing into my food, and he'd recommended blood work. Those results were still pending. You ever get that feeling where your brain just clicks and suddenly everything makes terrible sense? My hands moved with the steady precision I used when balancing the most complicated ledgers. I rotated the bowls, hers now where mine had been, mine where hers had been. The soup levels were nearly identical. I adjusted the napkins, shifted the cutlery to hide any evidence of the switch, and leaned back in my chair. Heart thumping, I picked up my water glass and took a casual sip just as Lydia returned with a basket of sourdough. She set it between us, her crisp white blouse immaculate as always. The Hendersons called today, she said, sliding back into her chair. They're having that garden party next weekend. I told them we'd bring a bottle of the Cabernet we picked up in Napa. I nodded, watching her from behind my glasses. Sounds good, though I thought we were saving that for our anniversary. We can get another bottle. She waved her hand dismissively, then reached for her spoon, my original spoon, and dipped it into what had been my bowl. The kitchen felt suddenly smaller, the tick of our vintage mantel clock louder. I remembered installing that clock when we'd first bought the house. Lydia had laughed as I measured the wall 3 times before hanging it, teasing me about my accountant's precision. Now that precision might save my life. How's the soup? I asked, my voice impressively steady. She brought the spoon toward her lips, then paused. Her nose wrinkled slightly as she sniffed. Does yours taste metallic? I forced myself to look surprised, then tasted from my new bowl, her original portion. No, it's good. Same recipe as always. Lydia frowned, setting her spoon down without taking a bite. Something's off with mine. Maybe the pot wasn't rinsed properly. Want to switch? I offered, knowing she wouldn't. No, I'm not really hungry anyway. She pushed the bowl away slightly. I had a late lunch with the girls after yoga. I nodded and continued eating, forcing down every spoonful while making small talk about client files and neighborhood gossip. Each swallow felt like a small victory. Whatever she'd put in my original bowl, whatever had made her hesitate, was now sitting untouched in front of her. After dinner, I volunteered to clean up while Lydia went upstairs to answer some emails. Once alone, I emptied the contents of her rejected bowl into a Ziploc bag and tucked it behind the ice cream in the freezer. Tomorrow, I'd find somewhere to get it tested. That night, as we got ready for bed, Lydia seemed distracted. She applied her night cream with mechanical precision, her reflection watching me in the bathroom mirror. "You feeling okay?" she asked, her voice casual. "You look a little flushed." "Just tired," I said, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Tax season's coming up. You know how it gets." She nodded, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Maybe you should see Dr. Keller again. Your heart." My pulse thudded in my ears as I rinsed my toothbrush. "Maybe I will." "Is the bread good?" I asked, breaking off a piece of sourdough. "Mrs. Hendricks always makes the best." Lydia nodded absently, lifting her spoon again. She dipped it into the soup, my original portion, and raised it to her lips. One quick sniff, and her expression changed. It was subtle, the kind of micro-reaction you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. But I was looking. I'd been married to this woman for 15 years, and in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. She set the spoon down without tasting and pushed the bowl away slightly. "Everything okay?" I asked, concern dripping from my voice like honey. "There's something off about this batch." She wrinkled her nose. "I'm getting a metallic aftertaste. Don't you taste it?" I made a show of taking another spoonful from my bowl, her original portion, and rolling it around my mouth thoughtfully. "Tastes the same as always to me." I shrugged, taking another bite. "Maybe it's that new medication affecting your taste buds." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm not on any new medication." "Oh, right." I smiled apologetically. "I was thinking of those vitamins you've been taking." "Those are just supplements." She waved dismissively, but her fingers tapped against the tablecloth. A nervous habit I'd noticed over the years when she was hiding something. Nothing that would affect taste. I nodded toward her bowl. "You should eat something. You've been looking a little pale lately." The kitchen felt charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. 15 years of Sunday soups, and suddenly we were strangers sizing each other up across the table. "I'm really not hungry." She glanced toward the stove, then back to my now empty bowl. "I could heat you up some more if you want. There's plenty left." That's when I knew for certain. Whatever was in that soup wasn't meant to be a one-time thing. She wanted me to consume every drop. "No thanks. I'm good." I patted my stomach. That hit the spot. She forced a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, at least one of us enjoyed it. Maybe I'm coming down with something." "Maybe." I dabbed my mouth with the napkin. "Want me to make you some toast instead?" "No, I'll just have some yogurt later." She stood, gathering the dishes. "You relax. I'll clean up." I watched as she carried the bowls to the sink, my empty one and her full one. The sound of the faucet running followed, and I knew she was washing away the evidence, pouring her untouched portion down the drain. What was in that soup that she was afraid to eat? What had she put in my bowl that made her hesitate when our positions were reversed? I thought about Dr. Keller's concerned face as he listened to my heart, the slow, irregular beat that had appeared out of nowhere these past few weeks. The fatigue I'd been fighting, the way Lydia had insisted on crushing those vitamins into my food herself. The water shut off, and Lydia returned to the table with a bright smile that didn't match the calculation I now saw in her eyes. "I was thinking," she said, sitting back down, "maybe we should both get checkups. With tax season coming, we can't afford for you to get sick." I nodded, feeling the weight of the Ziploc bag hidden in the freezer. "That's thoughtful of you. I worry about your heart, you know." Her voice was soft, concerned. "Your father had problems at your age." My father had died of a heart attack at 58. It was a fact she'd never paid much attention to before. "I'm only 40, I reminded her. "Still." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her palm was cool and dry. "Better safe than sorry." I squeezed back, wondering when exactly my wife had decided I was worth more dead than alive. "I appreciate the concern," I said, meaning every word, but not in the way she thought. She stood, smoothing her slacks. "I think I'll take a bath. You coming up soon? In a bit. I want to check some emails first. As she left the kitchen, I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, waiting until I heard the bathroom door close and the water start running. Then I moved quickly to the freezer, checking that my sample was still hidden behind the ice cream. It was there, the evidence safely tucked away. Tomorrow I'd find somewhere to get it tested, somewhere Lydia wouldn't know about. For now, though, I had to act normal. Had to pretend I hadn't just watched my wife refuse to eat what she'd intended for me. The question pounding in my head matched the irregular beat of my heart. What was she afraid of ingesting? I waited until the digital clock on our nightstand showed 1:17 a.m. Lydia had been asleep for over an hour, her breathing deep and rhythmic beside me. I'd perfected the art of slipping out of bed without disturbing her, a skill I'd developed from years of late-night tax emergencies during filing season. My feet found the carpet silently. The floorboard 3 steps from our bed always creaked, so I stepped over it with practiced ease. The hallway was dark, but I didn't need light to navigate our home of 12 years. In the kitchen, I moved with deliberate care. The faint glow from the microwave clock cast just enough light to see by. I reached for the cabinet above the refrigerator, the one where Lydia kept her wellness supplies. My fingers found the small silver vial she'd been adding to my food for the past month. The one she called her special vitamin blend. The one I now suspected was slowly poisoning me. I unscrewed the cap and caught a whiff of something bitter. Not vitamin-like at all. More medicinal. Chemical. I'd worked with enough doctors' offices over the years to recognize when something wasn't right. The silvery liquid caught what little light there was, shimmering with menace. From the drawer beside the sink, I pulled out a fresh Ziploc bag. Quality evidence handling was something I'd learned from Dave, my retired cop friend who'd become a client and then a mentor. Chain of custody, he'd explained once while I helped him organize his retirement accounts. It's what makes or breaks a case. I carefully tipped the vial, watching as the drops slid down into the plastic bag. Not much left, maybe a teaspoon's worth, but enough for testing. I made sure to get every last drop, then sealed the bag, pressed out the air, and sealed it again. A Sharpie from the junk drawer served to label the bag with today's date and time, 1:23 a.m. I added silver vial from kitchen cabinet, and my initials, M.A., Michael Andrew Aldridge, the accountant who noticed when numbers didn't add up. I remember the first time I caught a client cooking their books. It was the same feeling I had now, that hollow sensation when you realize someone you trusted has been lying to your face. Only this time, the stakes were considerably higher than tax fraud. The bag felt impossibly heavy in my hand as I carried it to my home office. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk, the one where I kept copies of our most important tax documents and the deed to the house, things Lydia never bothered with. Financial matters had always been my department. I slipped the Ziploc beneath a manila folder labeled Personal Documents and locked the drawer. Tomorrow morning, I'd contact Mid-State Laboratory Services, a discreet testing facility I'd used for a client's environmental compliance case last year. They were expensive but thorough, and most importantly, they weren't connected to any local medical facilities where Lydia might have contacts. On my phone, I pulled up their website and scheduled a courier pickup for 7 a.m., early enough that I could hand off the sample before Lydia woke up. I paid the rush fee with my personal credit card, not the joint one, and added special instructions. Test for all potential toxins, particularly those affecting cardiac function. The soup had tasted normal enough while I was eating it, but now my stomach churned with an acidic burn that wasn't just anxiety. Whatever had been in that bowl was working its way through my system. I'd eaten it all, wanting Lydia to believe her plan, whatever it was working. I took 2 antacid tablets from the bathroom medicine cabinet, chewing them quietly in the dark. The chalky taste couldn't mask the metallic aftertaste that lingered at the back of my throat. Back in our bedroom, I paused in the doorway. Lydia's auburn hair spread across her pillow, catching moonlight from the window. She looked peaceful. Beautiful, even. The woman I'd built a life with for 15 years. The woman who might be trying to kill me. I eased myself back into bed, careful not to disturb the mattress too much. She stirred slightly, mumbling something in her sleep before settling again. I lay rigid beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. In, out, so steady, so normal. My own breathing felt shallow by comparison, my heart thumping with an irregular cadence that hadn't been there 6 weeks ago. The burn in my stomach intensified, and I wondered what damage had already been done. How long had she been adding that silver liquid to my food? What was her endgame? I turned my head slightly to study her profile in the darkness. The same face I'd woken up to for years now seemed like a stranger's. What secrets lived behind those closed eyelids? What calculations ran through her mind when she measured out those drops? As I lay there, my stomach acid rising like a tide of betrayal, one thought kept circling. I'd trusted her with everything, my heart, my home, my life. And now I was gambling that same life on a lab test and the hope that I'd caught on before it was too late. 2 days crawled by like I was walking through wet cement. I kept up appearances at home, smiling at the right times, making small talk over dinner, even kissing Lydia goodbye in the mornings. All while my insides twisted with every bite of food she prepared. I'd started bringing lunch from the deli near my office and claiming client dinners to avoid eating at home. Wednesday afternoon, I was reviewing quarterly projections when my cell phone buzzed. Unknown number with our area code. I hesitated, then picked up. Michael Aldridge speaking. Mr. Aldridge, this is Dr. Helena Weiss from Midstate Laboratory Services. Her voice was crisp, professional. I'm calling about the sample you submitted Monday morning. My mouth went dry. I closed my office door and lowered my voice. Yes. Thank you for getting back to me so quickly. We've completed our analysis, and I wanted to discuss the results personally rather than sending them electronically, given their unusual nature. My stomach dropped. I appreciate that. What did you find? The liquid in your sample contains a significant concentration of digitalis glycosides, specifically digoxin. She paused. Are you familiar with this compound? Not really, I admitted, grabbing a pen. What exactly is it? It's a cardiac glycoside derived from foxglove plants. In controlled, prescribed doses, it's used to treat certain heart conditions. Her voice took on a more careful tone. However, the concentration in your sample is concerning. May I ask where this liquid came from? I scribbled digitalis on my notepad. It was being added to food, as a supplement. Mr. Aldridge, Dr. Weiss said firmly, this is not a dietary supplement. Digitalis is a potent medication that affects heart rhythm and contractility. Improper use can cause heart failure or death. The concentration in your sample suggests intentional misuse. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the edge of my desk. I see, I managed. And if someone consumed this regularly over several weeks, they would likely experience progressive cardiac symptoms, fatigue, dizziness, irregular heartbeat, perhaps vision disturbances. Without medical intervention, it could eventually cause fatal arrhythmia. Fatal arrhythmia. The words echoed in my head like a death knell. Would it look like natural heart failure? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. To a doctor, I mean. A pause on the line. In someone with no history of heart disease, it might raise questions. But yes, it could potentially mimic natural cardiac issues, especially in someone with pre-existing conditions or of a certain age. Of a certain age, like a 40-year-old man whose doctor had recently noted a concerning heart rhythm. I'm sending your full report now, she continued. But Mr. Aldridge, if this substance was being administered to someone without their knowledge, I strongly recommend contacting the authorities. This is potentially attempted murder. Ice replaced the blood in my veins. Not a hot, panicked fear, but something colder and clearer. Thank you, Dr. Weiss. I'll handle it appropriately. After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring at the word on my notepad. Digitalis. The vitamins. Lydia had been adding to my food for weeks now. The drops that had appeared around the same time my heart had started acting up. My computer pinged with the incoming email. I opened the report and scanned through the technical jargon until I found what I was looking for. Concentration consistent with intentional toxic exposure rather than therapeutic use. I pulled up a browser window and typed digitalis poisoning symptoms. The list that appeared matched everything I'd been experiencing. Fatigue, visual disturbances, that weird blue-yellow color shift I'd noticed when looking at spreadsheets, the irregular heartbeat my doctor had commented on last month. "Just stress," Lydia had said, rubbing my shoulders. "You work too hard, Michael. Let me take care of you." The memory turned my stomach. All those bowls of soup, those smoothies she'd started making in the mornings, the vitamin drops for my immune system. My wife wasn't trying to boost my health. She was systematically destroying it. I hit print on the toxicology report, listening to the whir of the printer in the corner of my office. Outside, clouds had gathered, darkening the afternoon sky. As I stood to collect the pages, a low rumble of thunder shook the windows. My hands weren't steady as I gathered the warm pages from the printer tray. The tremor wasn't just emotion. It was a physical symptom of what she'd been doing to me. How long had she been planning this? Weeks? Months? Years? Rain began to pelt against the windows as lightning flashed, illuminating my office in harsh, white light. I stared at the clinical evidence of betrayal in my hands while thunder crashed overhead, nature's percussion perfectly timed to the terrible revelation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. My wife was trying to kill me. I tucked the lab report into my locked drawer and spent the afternoon in a fog. Every client conversation felt distant, like I was speaking from underwater. Somehow, I made it through my last appointment, locked up the office, and drove home on autopilot. The whole time, one thought kept circling. I needed to confront Lydia without showing my full hand. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my strategy was set. Keep it vague. Watch her reaction. Don't reveal what I knew about the digitalis. The house smelled like garlic and butter when I walked in. Lydia was at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. My stomach clenched. "You're cooking?" I asked, setting my briefcase down. She turned, flashing that perfect smile. "Shrimp scampi, your favorite." Was it poison too? The thought hit me like a physical blow. "Looks great," I lied. "Mind if I pour the wine?" I selected a bottle from our rack, grateful for the excuse to control what went into my glass. As I uncorked it, I noticed Lydia watching me from the corner of her eye. "Well, how was your day?" she asked, her voice light. "Interesting, actually." I kept my tone casual as I poured 2 glasses. "Got a call from a lab today." Her wooden spoon paused mid-stir, just for a split second. "Oh, what kind of lab?" "Testing lab." I handed her a glass, watching her face. "You know how I've been feeling off lately. Thought I'd check a few things." Lydia's expression stiffened momentarily before she recovered. "That's thorough of you. What did they say?" I shrugged, taking a sip of wine. Still waiting on the full results, but they had some interesting questions about supplements I might be taking. Her knuckles whitened around the spoon. "Well, that's why I've been giving you those vitamins, to help with your energy levels." I nodded, holding her gaze. "Right. Those vitamins." A heavy silence fell between us. For a moment, I thought she might crack, admit something, show guilt, anything. Instead, she turned back to the stove and switched off the burner. "Perfect timing," she said brightly. "Dinner's ready." Throughout the meal, I pushed the shrimp around my plate, taking minimal bites and hiding most under a napkin when she wasn't looking. Lydia chatted about neighborhood gossip, her voice unnaturally animated. I nodded at appropriate intervals, watching her hands for any suspicious movements near my plate or glass. As we finished, she suddenly brightened. "Oh, I almost forgot to tell you. I've scheduled something important for us." "What's that?" I asked, setting down my fork. "Comprehensive physicals. For life insurance." She dabbed her lips with a napkin. "I spoke with Bradley at State Farm yesterday. We're both getting older, and our current coverage is outdated." My pulse quickened. "Life insurance? It's just practical, Michael." Her tone was reasonable, maternal almost. If something happened to either of us, the survivor would need financial protection. The business, the house, it's all tied up together. I forced myself to nod. "When are these physicals?" 10 days from now." Wednesday the 24th. She stood, collecting our plates. They'll do blood work, EKG, the works. It's quite comprehensive. I watched her walk to the calendar hanging by the refrigerator. She picked up a red marker and drew a perfect circle around the date. There, she said with satisfaction. Now, we won't forget. 10 days. The timeline suddenly became crystal clear. She needed me to pass that physical, to show no signs of poisoning, so the insurance would pay out when I eventually died of natural causes. After that, she'd likely increase the dosage until my heart gave out completely. Sounds good, I said, amazed at how steady my voice remained. Always smart to plan ahead. Lydia beamed at me, apparently pleased with my cooperation. She returned to the table and began gathering the remaining dishes. I'm glad you understand, she said. Health is wealth, as they say. I stood to help clear the table, my mind racing. 10 days to figure out what to do. 10 days to gather evidence, to protect myself, to understand why my wife wanted me dead. I'll rinse these, I offered, taking the plates from her hands. Our fingers brushed, and I suppressed a shudder. Such a good husband, Lydia murmured, stepping closer. She leaned in and pressed her lips against my cheek, her perfume enveloping me. The same scent I'd found comforting for years now seemed cloying, dangerous. Her smile was flawless as she pulled away, not a hint of guilt or hesitation, just the calm confidence of someone who believed their plan was working perfectly. I'll be in the living room if you need me, she said, turning away. I stood at the sink, watching water run over our dinner plates, the clock on the wall suddenly thundering in my ears. 10 days. The countdown had begun. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Lydia's even breathing beside me. The digital clock on my nightstand read 2:17 a.m. The red numbers glowed in the darkness like the circle on our calendar. Wednesday the 24th. 10 days away. 10 days to live, if I did nothing. My fingers drifted to my wrist, feeling for my pulse. 1, 2, 3. I counted the seconds between each beat. Slower than normal, just as the doctor had mentioned last month. Unusual for someone your age, he'd said, recommending further tests. Tests I'd postponed because tax season was approaching. Now I wondered if my heart had been slowing because of what Lydia had been slipping into my food for weeks, maybe months. Digitalis. The word itself sounded like a death sentence. Rain started outside, gentle at first, then picking up rhythm against the roof. Each drop seemed to echo. Tick, tick, tick. A countdown to something terrible. I shifted in bed, careful not to wake her. How had we gotten here? 12 years of marriage, building a business together, planning for a future that apparently only included one of us. Had I missed the signs? Had I been so wrapped up in quarterly filings and client meetings that I'd failed to notice my wife plotting my death? The mattress felt like concrete beneath me, unyielding and cold. I'd never felt more alone than I did lying next to the woman who'd shared my name, my home, my life. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows. I remembered our first apartment, how we'd curl together during storms, making plans for the future. The memory tasted bitter now, like the metallic residue of the soup. I needed help. This wasn't just about a failing marriage or even a divorce. This was about survival. My phone sat on the nightstand, charging. I reached for it slowly, the screen's glow illuminating my face as I unlocked it. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Dave Mercer's name. My thumb hovered over the call button. Dave was retired now, but he'd been a detective for 30 years. More importantly, he owed me. 3 years ago, I'd found a payroll error that would have cost him his full pension. I'd fixed it quietly, saving him from a bureaucratic nightmare. He'd promised to return the favor someday. I never thought I'd be calling in that marker because my wife was trying to kill me. Would he even believe me? It sounded insane. Successful small-town accountant's wife poisoning him for... what? Money? The business? Was there someone else? I set the phone down without calling. It was the middle of the night. better to approach him with clear thoughts and evidence, not panicked theories at 2:30 a.m. The rain continued its relentless tapping, like fingers drumming on a table during a tense negotiation. I tried to organize my thoughts, the way I would approach a complex tax problem for a client. What did I know for certain? The lab confirmed digitalis in the vitamin powder. Lydia had been giving me these supplements for at least 6 weeks. My symptoms, fatigue, slowed heart rate, occasional dizziness, matched low-dose digitalis poisoning. And now, suddenly, she wanted comprehensive life insurance physicals. What didn't I know? Why she wanted me dead? Whether she was working alone? How long she'd been planning this? I rolled onto my side, facing away from her. 10 days wasn't much time, but it was something. I'd built my career on attention to detail, on finding patterns in numbers that others missed. I could apply those same skills here. First, I needed to stop ingesting anything Lydia prepared. That meant making my own meals, bringing my own drinks, watching everything I consumed. Second, I needed evidence. More than just the lab report. If she was willing to poison me, what else was she capable of? The rain eased slightly, no longer pounding but still steady. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart thump in my chest, still beating, still fighting. I'd survived tax audits, economic downturns, and building a business from scratch. I wasn't going to let Lydia take everything from me, not my health, not my company, not my life. I reached for my phone again, Dave's contact information glowing on the screen. It was late, but this couldn't wait until morning. Not with Lydia sleeping beside me, perhaps dreaming of widowhood. Not with a red circle marking my deadline. My thumb hovered over the call button. Dave would know what to do, how to gather evidence that would stand up in court. He'd understand the stakes. The rain tapped against the roof, counting down the seconds as I made my decision. I waited until Lydia left for her morning Pilates class before making the call. The sun was just breaking over the horizon, painting the kitchen in soft gold light that felt at odds with the darkness of my situation. Dave picked up on the third ring, his voice gruff with sleep. Mercer. Dave, it's Mike Aldridge. I need your help. It's complicated. There was a pause, then a rustling sound. Must be serious if you're calling at dawn. You okay? Not really. Can we meet somewhere private? Another pause. My place. I'm in the garage most mornings anyway. You remember where? The ranch house off County Line Road. I'll be there in 30. I hung up before he could ask questions I wasn't ready to answer over the phone. My hands were steady as I gathered the lab report and slipped it into a manila folder. Years of handling sensitive financial documents had taught me discretion. The drive to Dave's place gave me time to rehearse what I'd say. How do you tell someone your wife is poisoning you? The words sounded ridiculous even in my head. Dave's driveway was gravel, crunching under my tires as I pulled up beside his weathered pickup. The garage door was open, revealing a cluttered workspace dominated by a vintage motorcycle in various stages of disassembly. He was bent over the engine, wiping his hands on a rag when I approached. Dave looked exactly as I remembered. Broad-shouldered with a silver crew cut and a face weathered by decades of police work. He straightened up when he saw me, his expression shifting from casual to concerned. Mike. Been a while. He extended a hand, still slightly stained with motor oil. I shook it firmly. Thanks for seeing me on short notice. Coffee's fresh. He nodded toward a battered percolator on a workbench. Though I'm guessing this isn't a social call. The garage smelled of motor oil, metal, and coffee, oddly comforting in its masculinity. This was a place of tools and solutions, exactly what I needed. It's not. I accepted the mug he offered, the ceramic warm against my palms. I think my wife is trying to kill me. To his credit, Dave didn't laugh or dismiss me. He just set down his own mug and gestured to a pair of folding chairs in the corner. Start from the beginning. I did. The vitamins, the switched soup bowls, the lab report confirming digitalis, the life insurance exam scheduled 10 days out. Dave listened without interruption, his expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, I handed him the lab report. He studied it, his brow furrowing as he read. You were smart to switch the bowls, he finally said, looking up. And smarter to get this tested. Most guys would have dismissed their suspicions. Most guys aren't married to someone feeding them poison. The words felt strange leaving my mouth, making the situation real in a way it hadn't been before. Dave set the report down. I owe you, Mike. That pension situation. You saved my retirement. I haven't forgotten. I'm not calling in a favor, Dave. I'll pay whatever your consulting rate is. He waved me off. This isn't about money. This is about keeping you alive. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. You need evidence, hard evidence, that'll stand up in court. The lab report shows someone had digitalis. Doesn't prove she was giving it to you deliberately. He shook his head. We need more. We need her on record. How do we get that? Dave stood and walked to a metal cabinet in the corner. He unlocked it with a key from his pocket and pulled out a small black case. First, we document everything, every meal, every interaction. We need to establish a pattern. He returned to his seat. Second, we get eyes where you can't be. Your kitchen, your medicine cabinet. You're talking about surveillance? I'm talking about survival. Dave's voice was firm. This isn't just about catching her, Mike. It's about keeping you breathing long enough to do it. He was right. I nodded slowly. What do we need? Dave opened the black case. Inside were several small devices that looked like thumb drives. These are motion-activated cameras. High-definition, wireless transmission to a secure cloud server only I can access. Is that legal? In your own home, when you have reasonable suspicion of a felony being committed against you? Dave raised an eyebrow. Yes, especially in this state. We spent the next hour mapping out my house, identifying key locations for cameras, the kitchen spice rack, the medicine cabinet, my home office. Dave showed me how to position them for maximum coverage while remaining hidden. Check in with me daily, he instructed. And for God's sake, don't eat or drink anything she prepares. I won't. Dave reached into the case again and pulled out one last device, smaller than the others. He slid it across the workbench to me, its tiny lens catching the morning light. This one's special. Better resolution. Wider angle. He pressed a button and a small red LED blinked to life. Put this somewhere central. Somewhere she spends time. I picked up the camera, feeling its weight. It was barely larger than a quarter, but it represented something massive. Eyes where trust had died. I barely had time to process everything Dave had told me before my phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. Going to Nordstrom, then meeting Melissa for coffee. Back around 4. I showed Dave the message. 2-hour window, maybe 3 if she's shopping. Perfect. Dave checked his watch. Let's move. 20 minutes later, we pulled into my driveway. I felt strange unlocking my own front door, like I was breaking into someone else's home. The house I'd lived in for 8 years suddenly felt foreign. A crime scene waiting to be documented. You're sure she'll be gone? Dave asked, hauling a small duffel bag from his truck. Nordstrom's 40 minutes away, and Melissa always runs late. I glanced at my watch. We've got time. Inside, Dave set his bag on the kitchen counter and unzipped it with practiced efficiency. Show me where she keeps her supplies. I pointed to the spice rack beside the stove, a wedding gift from my mother. The vitamins are usually in the cabinet above, but she mixes them into food here. Dave nodded and pulled out 3 tiny cameras, each no bigger than a button. These are motion activated. They'll only record when there's movement in their field of view. Battery life? 2 weeks. Easy. He handed me a pair of latex gloves. Put these on. No fingerprints, no evidence we were here. I snapped them on, feeling like I was in some surreal crime drama. This is my house, Dave. And we're gathering evidence against your wife. His expression softened. I know this is hard, Mike, but we need to be thorough. He was right. I took a deep breath and pointed to the spice rack. Let's start there. Working quickly, Dave removed 3 spice jars from the back row: oregano, rosemary, and thyme. He positioned tiny cameras behind each, angling them for maximum coverage of the counter and stove. These will capture her preparing meals, he explained, carefully replacing the jars. If she's adding anything unusual, we'll see it. Next, we moved to the dining table, Dave knelt underneath and attached a small digital recorder to the underside of the tabletop. "Voice activated," he said. "It'll pick up your conversations during meals." I watched him work, a heaviness settling in my chest. How had my life come to this? Installing surveillance to catch my wife trying to poison me? The memory of our wedding day flashed through my mind. Lydia in white, her smile genuine as we fed each other cake. Had it all been a lie? Or had something changed along the way? "You okay?" Dave's voice pulled me back. "Yeah." I shook my head. "Just processing." He squeezed my shoulder. "One more. Where's the soup from the other night?" I led him to the refrigerator and pulled out a container of leftover chicken noodle. She made a big batch. "This is what's left." Dave produced a small evidence kit from his bag. Plastic container, sealing tape, labels. With methodical precision, he transferred a portion of the soup into the container, sealed it, and labeled it with the date and time. "I'll send this to a different lab," he said. "Independent verification is crucial." "Will it be enough?" I asked, watching him pack the sample away. "For court? Maybe not alone." Dave zipped his bag. "But combined with the other evidence we're gathering, plus the first lab report, it builds a case." He walked me through the camera system one more time. How to check if they were working, how to download footage if needed, how to hide any traces of our surveillance. "Remember, act normal," he emphasized. "If she suspects anything, she'll change tactics, and we'll lose our chance." "I've been acting normal while thinking my wife wants me dead," I replied dryly. "I think I can manage." Dave almost smiled at that. "Good man. Call me tonight. Let me know if—" The distant sound of tires on gravel cut him off. We both froze. "That's her car," I whispered. Dave quickly gathered his equipment bag. "Is there a back door?" I nodded and led him through the kitchen to the rear exit. As we reached it, I heard Lydia's key in the front lock. "Go," I urged. "I'll call you later." Dave slipped out, disappearing around the side of the house just as I heard Lydia call my name. "In the kitchen," I answered, pulling off the latex gloves and stuffing them in my pocket. I turned to face the doorway, heart hammering in my chest. As Lydia appeared, shopping bags in hand, I glanced briefly at the spice rack. From this angle, I could just make out the faint red LED of the camera behind the rosemary jar, a tiny pinpoint of light in the shadows. Our eyes were watching now. Whatever happened next, we'd have proof. 2 mornings later, I woke to an empty bed. Lydia's side was already cold, the sheets neatly tucked. Unusual for a Saturday. I listened for sounds in the house and heard the distant hum of the washing machine. "Lydia!" I called out, pulling on my robe. "Downstairs." Her voice floated up, cheerful and light. "Making breakfast." I checked my watch. 7:15 a.m. Lydia never voluntarily cooked breakfast, especially not this early on weekends. Something was off. "Be down in a minute," I called back, keeping my tone casual. With Lydia occupied, I decided to check her home office. We each had separate workspaces, mine for client paperwork, hers for her wellness business and personal projects. We respected each other's privacy, never entering without permission. At least, that had been our arrangement. I paused at her door, listening for footsteps on the stairs. Nothing. Just the distant clatter of pans from the kitchen. Her office was immaculate as always. Desk organized, papers aligned, pens in their holder. Everything in its place, just like Lydia herself. I moved carefully, making sure not to disturb anything. The trash can caught my eye, unusually full. Lydia typically emptied it daily. I knelt down and noticed thin strips of paper, meticulously shredded by hand. Something about the color looked familiar. I carefully extracted several pieces, laying them on her desk. Pink paper, the same shade as the receipt from the toxicology lab. My heart rate kicked up a notch. I arranged the strips like puzzle pieces, confirming my suspicion when I spotted the partial letterhead of Midwest Toxicology Services. She'd found the receipt and destroyed it. My evidence was gone. But more importantly, Lydia now knew I was onto her. The washing machine downstairs switched cycles with a loud click. I quickly returned the shredded pieces to the trash, positioning them exactly as I'd found them. As I stood to leave, my gaze fell on her desk calendar. The insurance physical date was circled twice in red, now just 7 days away. The clock was ticking faster. I slipped back to our bedroom, mind racing. If Lydia knew I suspected something, she might accelerate her plan or change tactics. I needed to be more careful. In the bathroom, I reached for my daily medications, blood pressure pills, and a daily vitamin. The 7-day organizer sat on the shelf, filled for the week ahead by Lydia, a helpful habit she'd started about a month ago. I picked it up, noticing immediately that it felt heavier than usual. Opening Monday's compartment, I tipped the pills into my palm. The blood pressure medication looked normal, but the vitamin capsule was different, darker brown instead of the usual light amber, and slightly larger. I set the organizer down with shaking hands. She was getting bolder, switching from vitamin drops in my food to tampering with my actual medication. I couldn't take these, but if I didn't, she'd know I was suspicious. I emptied each day's compartment onto the bathroom counter, creating 7 small piles. Every vitamin capsule had been replaced with the darker version. I examined one closely. The seam where the capsule halves joined was slightly uneven, suggesting it had been opened and resealed. You ever have that moment when reality shifts beneath your feet? When everything you thought was solid just crumbles? That's what happened as I stared at those pills. 20 years of marriage, and my wife was methodically trying to poison me to death. I needed to know what dose I was dealing with. Pulling out my phone, I searched for digitalis concentrations and toxicity levels, scanning medical websites while listening for Lydia's footsteps. According to what I read, digitalis built up in the system over time. Small doses might cause mild symptoms, nausea, vision changes, fatigue, but accumulated exposure could trigger cardiac arrest that would appear natural in someone with my medical history. The perfect murder. No messy crime scene, no suspicious injuries, just a middle-aged man with a heart condition who passed away in his sleep. "Mike, breakfast is ready." Lydia's voice startled me. "Coming," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I had to think fast. I couldn't take these pills, but I couldn't let her know I'd discovered the switch. I grabbed the original vitamin bottle from the cabinet and extracted 7 normal capsules, replacing the doctored ones in my organizer. I slipped the tampered pills into a small plastic bag and tucked it into my robe pocket. "Mike." Her voice was closer now, at the bottom of the stairs. "Just washing up," I called, heart pounding. I closed the organizer and placed it back on the shelf, then picked up today's pills, the safe replacements I'd just swapped in. As I filled a glass with water, I heard Lydia's footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the doorway just as I raised the pill to eye level, hesitating. If I took it, she'd think her plan was working. If I refused, she'd know something was wrong. My hand trembled, the small capsule between my fingers suddenly feeling like it weighed a ton. I swallowed the pill, my safe replacement, and headed downstairs. Breakfast with Lydia felt like sitting across from a stranger wearing my wife's face. Her smile never reached her eyes as she asked about my workday ahead. I mumbled something about client meetings, my mind still reeling from what I'd discovered. When I left for the office, I slipped the bag of tampered pills into my briefcase. More evidence. Though I wasn't sure what good it would do now. The day crawled by in a fog. I couldn't focus on spreadsheets when my life had become a twisted calculation of its own. How many days until the insurance physical? How much poison might already be in my system? How many chances Lydia would have to try again? Around 6 that evening, my cell phone buzzed. Dave's name flashed on the screen. "Mike, you need to see this. Now." His voice was tight, controlled, and "I've been monitoring the feed from your kitchen." "What is it?" I asked, glancing around my empty office. "She's on camera, clear as day. I'm sending you a still image." My phone pinged with an incoming message. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. There was Lydia, standing at our kitchen counter, carefully measuring white powder from a small vial into a stainless steel thermos. My thermos, the one I took to work every day. "Jesus," I whispered. "Wow, there's more," Dave said. "Keep watching the live feed. I'm sending you the link." I clicked through to a grainy video stream from our kitchen. Lydia was stirring the thermos, her back to the camera. Then she paused, her shoulders tensing. Slowly, she turned around, scanning the kitchen with narrowed eyes. My pulse quickened as she walked toward the spice rack, getting closer to the hidden camera. Then her gaze locked directly on the lens. "Shit!" I hissed. Her face filled the frame, eyes wide with recognition. Her hand reached forward, and the image jolted violently before cutting to static. "Dave, what happened?" "She found it, smashed it." His voice was grim. "But listen, the memory card might still be intact. These units store footage locally before transmitting. If we can get to it tonight, we might recover everything." I checked my watch. Just past 6:30. "She doesn't know I was watching remotely," Dave continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And she doesn't know about the second camera in the dining room. It's still transmitting. She's on the phone with someone right now." Pacing. My mind raced. Did she see the other cameras? Don't think so. But Mike, you need to get that memory card. Tonight. Before she has a chance to dispose of it. I swallowed hard. What if she's waiting for me? Play it cool. Act normal. You don't know anything about the cameras, remember? I installed them while you were getting coffee. Far as she knows, you're clueless. That was our cover story. Plausible deniability if things went south. Dave had insisted on it. "What about the police?" I asked. "With what evidence? A broken camera? She'll say it was a home security system you never told her about. Without the footage proving what was in that powder, we've got nothing." He was right. We needed that memory card. "I'm heading home now," I said, gathering my things. "Be careful," Dave warned. "Text me when you're inside. I'll keep monitoring the dining room feed." The drive home felt surreal. Streetlights blurred past as my mind cycled through scenarios. Would Lydia confront me? Was she calling a lawyer? Or worse, her accomplice? Because there had to be an accomplice. The insurance policy, the firm, my client list. Someone stood to gain besides Lydia. Someone who could help her navigate the financial aftermath of my natural death. I pulled into our driveway at 7:15. Lydia's car was parked in its usual spot. The house looked normal, lights on in the kitchen and living room, just like any other evening. My palms were slick with sweat as I grabbed my briefcase. Inside was the bag of tampered pills, evidence of her first attempt. Now I needed proof of the second. The walk to the front door seemed to take forever. Each step on the path felt like moving through molasses. I tried to steady my breathing, to compose my face into something resembling normalcy. What would I say if she confronted me? How would I explain the cameras without revealing Dave's involvement? My mind scrambled for excuses, explanations, anything that might buy me time to retrieve that memory card. I reached the door and slid my key into the lock. The familiar click seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet evening air. I turned the handle slowly, pushing the door open. Silence greeted me inside. No footsteps, no greeting, no sound of the television. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me with a soft click. I stood in the hallway, straining to hear any movement. The house felt different somehow. Colder, like a place I no longer recognized. "Mike." Lydia's voice floated down from upstairs. "Is that you?" "Yeah," I called back, trying to sound casual. "Just got home. I'll be down in a minute. Had a headache. Taking a bath." Perfect. I texted Dave quickly. "She's upstairs. Kitchen clear." His response came immediately. "Go now. Memory card first." I moved through the living room toward the kitchen, briefcase still in hand. My footsteps sounded thunderous to my ears, though I knew they were barely audible on the carpeted floor. The kitchen looked immaculate, no sign of the earlier confrontation. I spotted the smashed camera behind the microwave, its plastic housing cracked, lens shattered. Lydia had made no effort to hide it. Was that confidence or carelessness? I pocketed the broken device just as my phone vibrated with another text from Dave. "She's moving, heading toward the stairs." Water was running upstairs. She was draining the tub. I had minutes, maybe seconds. I retreated to the living room, slipping the broken camera into my briefcase before calling out, "I'm making coffee. Want some? No thanks, she answered, her voice closer now. I'm coming down. I busied myself with the coffee maker, my back to the doorway as she entered the kitchen. The hair on my neck stood up. Was she watching me? Studying me for signs I knew. How was work? She asked, her voice unnervingly normal. The usual. Tax season's ramping up. I kept my movements casual, measuring coffee grounds with steady hands despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Philip called earlier, she said. Something about the Westridge account. My stomach tightened at Philip's name. Did he? I'll call him tomorrow. She lingered a moment longer, then announced she was going to watch her show in the bedroom. I waited until I heard the television upstairs before texting Dave. Got it. Coming to you. Going for a drive? I called up the stairs. Need to clear my head. Don't be long, she replied, her voice honey-sweet. I made your favorite for dinner. The thought of eating anything she prepared made my stomach turn. 20 minutes later, I was back in Dave's garage. The smell of motor oil and metal felt like sanctuary after the suffocating tension of my home. Dave had the workbench cleared, tools laid out with military precision. Let's see what we've got, he said, taking the broken camera. He worked in silence, extracting the tiny memory card with needle-nose pliers. The card itself was scorched at one edge. Lydia must have smashed it against something that caused a spark. Might be damaged, Dave muttered, sliding it into a card reader connected to his laptop. But these things are tough. The screen flickered as the reader attempted to access the card. A warning popped up. File system corrupted. Attempt recovery? Dave clicked yes, and we watched as a progress bar crept across the screen. 12%, 27%, 43%. If we get anything, it'll be fragments, Dave warned. Don't expect full footage. The bar reached 100%, and a folder appeared with dozens of fragmented video files. Dave clicked on the first one. Static gave way to a jerky image of my kitchen. Lydia stood at the counter, measuring powder into the thermos. The timestamp showed 5:37 p.m. There's our proof, I said, leaning closer. The next file showed Lydia on her phone, pacing. Need to move faster, she was saying. The physical is in 9 days. If they find anything, Static interrupted. Then, said it's undetectable after 48 hours. I've increased the dosage. My blood ran cold. She'd been so methodical, so careful. This wasn't impulse. This was calculated murder. The third file started with Lydia opening the front door. Philip stepped inside, his slick suit and perfect hair, a stark contrast to my kitchen's homey simplicity. What the hell? I whispered. Dave said nothing, just clicked to the next fragment. Now they were at the dining table, papers spread out. Philip's manicured hand slid a document toward Lydia. Just needs his signature, Philip was saying. Or it activates automatically upon death. The shareholder agreement has the clause right here. The camera angle only caught part of the document, but I could make out the letterhead of my firm, Aldridge and Associates. Show me again, Lydia said, leaning forward. Philip pointed to a paragraph. If Michael becomes incapacitated or dies, control transfers to the remaining partners. With this amendment, I'll hold 51%. My legs nearly gave out. I gripped the edge of the workbench to steady myself. And the timeline, Lydia asked. Insurance pays out. I gain controlling interest. We implement the restructuring plan. The smaller clients go, we keep the high-value portfolios, sell the building, move operations to the city, and the employees? Lydia's voice was casual, as if asking about the weather. Philip shrugged. Redundancies are unfortunate but necessary. The next fragment showed them standing closer, Philip's arm around Lydia's waist. She was holding a pen, signing something. Freeze it, I said, my voice hoarse. Dave paused the frame. There, clear as day, was Philip signing my name on a document. Forgery. Corporate theft. Son of a bitch, Dave muttered. We tried to advance to the next fragment, but the screen flickered. The card reader blinked rapidly, then went dark. A burning smell filled the air. No, 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 Dave yanked the reader out, but it was too late. The card had fried completely. Can you recover anything else? I asked, desperate. Dave shook his head. That's it. Card's toast. I sank onto a stool, the full weight of the betrayal crushing down on me. Not just my wife trying to kill me, but my business partner stealing my company. The firm I'd built from nothing, the retirement plans of my employees, my life's work. "We have some footage at least," Dave said, gesturing to his laptop. "I saved what we could." "It's not enough," I whispered. "Not legally, not without the physical evidence." We sat in silence for a moment, the implications sinking in. "Mike," Dave said finally, "what's the play here?" I stared at the frozen image of Philip signing my name, of Lydia watching with that calculating smile. "Survival isn't enough anymore," I whispered. "They're not just taking my life, they're taking everything I've built." 7 days left. I stared at the calendar on Dave's garage wall, the red circle around my insurance exam date mocking me with every glance. The smell of motor oil and stale coffee hung in the air as we hunched over his workbench, empty takeout containers pushed aside. "Let me get this straight," I said, rubbing my temples. "The video we salvaged, inadmissible," Dave confirmed, his weathered face grim in the harsh fluorescent light. "I called in a favor with Judge Harmon, off the record, of course, and he said," Dave took a long sip of coffee, "without proper chain of custody, documented collection procedures, and verification of the recording equipment, it's useless in court. Might as well be a home movie." My shoulders slumped. 2 days gone since discovering the footage, and we were no closer to a solution. The partial video showing Philip forging my signature and Lydia plotting my natural death sat on Dave's laptop like a time bomb we couldn't defuse. "What about the lab results?" I asked. "Same problem. We didn't have official channels collect the samples. Any decent lawyer would tear it apart." I stood and paced the length of the garage. Behind me, an old Harley sat half dismantled, tools arranged with the precision of a man who valued order. Just like I'd valued trust and loyalty. Look where that got me. "We need something concrete," I said. "Something they can't explain away." "I'm working on it, Mike." Dave's voice had that old cop steadiness, but I could hear the frustration underneath. "But Lydia's smart. She destroyed the camera. She's altering your meds." As if on cue, my heart skipped, then hammered against my ribs. I gripped the edge of the workbench, waiting for the sensation to pass. It had been happening more frequently in the last 2 days. The digitalis was building up in my system. "You okay?" Dave was at my side, one broad hand on my shoulder. "Yeah." I took a deep breath. "Just another episode. You need to see a doctor." "And tell them what?" "That my wife is poisoning me, but I can't prove it." I shook my head. "They'd think I was paranoid or delusional." Dave sank back onto his stool. "We could go to the police." "With what? Fragments of video that we obtained illegally? Lab results from samples we can't prove came from my house?" I laughed bitterly. "Come on, Dave. You were a cop for 30 years. You know better." He nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, I do." I glanced at my watch. 6 hours until I had to go home and pretend everything was normal. Pretend I didn't know my wife wanted me dead and my business partner was waiting to carve up my company. I could just leave, I said quietly. Pack a bag and disappear. Dave looked up sharply. "And then what?" "I don't know. Start over somewhere. While they take everything you built. While Philip fires your staff and sells off your client list?" Dave shook his head. "That's not you, Mike. You don't abandon people who depend on you." He was right. The thought of my employees, some who'd been with me since I started the firm, losing their jobs made my stomach turn. Mrs. Hendricks was 3 years from retirement. Young Tim had a baby on the way. I couldn't leave them to Philip's restructuring plan. "Besides," Dave continued, "running looks guilty. They could spin it that you embezzled funds and fled." I sank back onto my stool, suddenly exhausted. "So what do we do?" "We keep digging. There has to be something we're missing." My phone buzzed. A text from Lydia. "Don't forget to take your medicine. Love you." The casual cruelty of it made my hands shake. I showed Dave the screen. "She's enjoying this," I said. "Playing with me." Dave studied the message, his expression darkening. "She's confident." People get sloppy when they're confident. We don't have time for them to get sloppy. 7 days, Dave. My heart's already acting up. Then stop taking the pills. She watches me, and if I suddenly refuse, she'll know something's up. We fell silent, the ticking of the wall clock suddenly loud in the garage. Outside, normal life continued. People going to work, planning weekends, trusting their spouses. I used to be one of them. I called my lawyer friend, Dave said finally, asked hypothetically what we'd need, and we need evidence collected legally, testimony from someone besides us, or, he hesitated, or what? A confession, recorded with their knowledge in a single-party consent state, which Indiana is. I laughed without humor. Right, I'll just ask Lydia to confess to trying to murder me. Dave didn't smile. There has to be a way. My heart fluttered again, a painful stutter that left me breathless. The digitalis was working, slowly killing me while we sat here without answers. Dave must have seen something in my face. He suddenly slammed his fist on the workbench, sending tools rattling. God damn it, we're not giving up, he growled. 7 days is a lifetime in an investigation. We're going to find something they can't wriggle out of, something incontestable. I wanted to believe him. But as another wave of dizziness washed over me, I wondered if we were running out of time faster than we thought. How? I asked simply. Dave's eyes met mine, fierce determination burning in them despite the lack of a clear plan. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I swear to you, Mike, we're going to nail these bastards before that clock runs out. 5 days. Just 5 days until the insurance exams that Lydia had scheduled like they were routine dentist appointments instead of the finish line for her murderous marathon. I'd been sleeping in the guest room, claiming my heart condition made me restless at night. The truth was, I couldn't stand lying next to her anymore, feeling her warmth and remembering how I'd once found comfort there. Now every gentle touch felt like the caress of a spider, patient and deadly. That morning, I'd managed to flush my pills when she wasn't looking. My heart still skipped occasionally. Residual effects, I guessed. But at least I wasn't adding more poison to my system. I was at my desk reviewing client files when Lydia appeared in the doorway of my home office. She wore her cream-colored blazer, the one she saved for important meetings. Bad sign. We need to talk, Michael. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. What's up? She closed the door behind her and sat across from me, crossing her legs precisely. Her movements were always so controlled, so deliberate. How had I never noticed the calculation behind them? I've been thinking about our situation, she said, placing a manila folder on the desk between us. This isn't working anymore. What isn't? Us. This marriage. She tapped the folder with one manicured fingernail. So I've drawn up divorce papers. I stared at the folder, genuinely surprised. This wasn't part of the plan I'd pieced together. Why divorce me when she was already setting me up for a natural death? Divorce, I echoed. It's for the best. She slid the folder toward me. I've cited irreconcilable differences due to your health issues. It's clean, simple. We can both move on. I opened the folder. The legal language swam before my tired eyes. After days of broken sleep and constant vigilance, exhaustion was becoming my default state. Why now? I asked. Your heart condition is getting worse. The stress of managing the firm isn't helping. Her voice softened with practiced concern. I'm worried about you, Michael. This way, you can focus on your health, and I can handle the business matters. The business matters. Of course. I scanned the agreement and found it. A clause transferring my controlling interest in the firm to her for health considerations. No mention of Philip, but I knew where those shares would end up. My shoulders sagged. God. I was tired. So tired of fighting, of second-guessing every word, every glance. Maybe this was simpler. Sign the papers, walk away with my life. My employees would still have jobs, even under new management. Maybe Philip and Lydia would keep them on to maintain appearances. I picked up the pen she'd placed beside the folder. It felt heavy in my hand. It's really for the best, Lydia repeated, her voice honey smooth. Think of your staff, A public scandal about attempted murder would destroy the firm's reputation. This way, everyone keeps their jobs, their dignity. She'd read my thoughts exactly. My hand hovered over the signature line. Just sign, and this nightmare ends. No more looking over my shoulder. No more wondering if today's the day my heart finally gives out. The pen touched paper. A small dot of ink spread on the line. The office door banged open. "Don't you dare sign that!" Dave growled, filling the doorway with his broad shoulders. Lydia's head snapped around. "Excuse me, this is a private conversation." Dave ignored her, his eyes locked on mine. "Put the pen down, Mike." "Dave," I started. "Maybe it's—" "No!" He strode forward, planting his hands on my desk. "Remember who you are. You're the guy who spotted a payroll error that saved my pension when no one else caught it. You're the guy who built a business from nothing, because you believe numbers don't lie, even when people do." I glanced at Lydia, whose face had hardened into a mask. "This is inappropriate," she said coldly. "Please leave." Dave never broke eye contact with me. "You still own your integrity, Mike. That's something they can't poison." The words hit me like a splash of cold water. He was right. I'd spent my entire career standing for accuracy, for truth in accounting. I'd built my reputation on it. And here I was, ready to sign it all away because I was tired. My grip tightened on the pen. With a sudden movement, I tore it away from the paper, leaving a jagged ink streak across the page. "No," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in days. "I'm not signing this." Lydia's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "You're not thinking clearly. Your health—" "My health is my concern." I cut her off, standing up. "And so is my company." "This is a mistake," she said, gathering the papers with efficient movements. "You're making things harder than they need to be." I met her gaze steadily. "Maybe, but I'm done taking the easy way out." She stood, tucking the folder under her arm. At the door, she paused and looked back, her voice dropping to that smooth, dangerous register I'd come to fear. "You'll regret that," she said simply, and walked out. The ink streak on the unsigned papers gleamed under my office lights, a battle line I'd finally refused to cross. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lydia's cold stare as she promised I'd regret not signing those papers. I tossed and turned in the guest bedroom until midnight, then gave up entirely. I called Dave. "You still up?" I whispered into the phone. "For you? Always." His gruff voice sounded wide awake. "Got something brewing anyway. Come over." 30 minutes later, I was sitting in Dave's cluttered home office, nursing a mug of coffee strong enough to strip paint. The room smelled of cigarettes. He'd quit smoking years ago, and the faint metallic tang of old case files. His computer hummed in the background, multiple screens casting a blue glow across his weathered face. "Remember when computers were just glorified calculators?" Dave chuckled, his fingers moving with surprising agility across the keyboard. 30 years on the force, and the best skills I picked up were from the tech nerds nobody respected. I leaned forward. "What exactly are you doing?" "Your wife's got cloud storage. Everybody does these days." He pointed to a progress bar crawling across one screen. "Most folks don't realize their devices back up automatically. That camera we installed. Bet you anything it was syncing to her cloud before she smashed it." My heart rate kicked up. "You can access that. Let's just say I've got a few tricks from before I turned in my badge." Dave's eyes never left the screen. "Plus, she's using your family account. Your email's the recovery option." I watched in disbelief as Dave navigated through folders and subfolders. The minutes stretched into hours as we sorted through vacation photos, work documents, and random screenshots. "There," I said suddenly, pointing at a folder labeled Home Security. "That's not a system we have." Dave clicked it open, revealing dozens of video files with timestamps matching our surveillance period. Bingo! The first video loaded, and there she was, Lydia in our kitchen, carefully measuring white powder into my thermos. The footage was crystal clear, far better than what we'd seen before. She looked directly at the camera at one point, her smile chilling as she realized she'd been caught. "Jesus," Dave muttered. "Keep going," I urged. The next file showed Lydia and Philip in my home office, bent over documents spread across my desk. I recognized our company letterhead. "Turn up the volume," I said. "Once the insurance exam confirms his heart condition, this transfer activates immediately upon death." Philip's voice came through clearly. "Natural causes, of course." "Of course," Lydia replied, signing my name with practiced ease. "The digitalis has been working perfectly. His doctor already noted the arrhythmia." I felt sick watching them calmly discuss my demise while dividing my life's work between them. "That's it," Dave said, his voice tight with anger. "That's our smoking gun." We spent the next hour downloading everything, creating multiple copies on separate drives. Dave encrypted each one, explaining the importance of preserving the metadata: timestamps, GPS coordinates, device information. "Chain of custody," he said, labeling a thumb drive. "Without it, evidence gets thrown out. With it, we've got them dead to rights." By 4 in the morning, we had assembled a comprehensive dossier: videos, screenshots, the lab reports on the digitalis, even recordings of Lydia discussing the vitamins she'd been adding to my food. "We need to be smart about this," Dave cautioned, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. "They're going to claim you faked all this out of jealousy or paranoia." I nodded, thinking through our next steps. "We need witnesses, independent verification, and timing," Dave added. "Hit them when they're most vulnerable, when they think they've won." We crafted a careful plan as dawn approached. Dave sent encrypted copies to his old partner at the department and to a digital forensics specialist he trusted. I drafted emails to my attorney and the state licensing board for CPAs, set to deliver automatically if I didn't cancel them within 48 hours. Insurance in case things went sideways. "One more thing," Dave said, typing rapidly. "Let's make sure these files can't disappear." He set up a verification system that would ping both our phones when the cloud backups were accessed or modified. As the sun broke over the horizon, my phone chimed with the confirmation. "Time-stamped, geotagged, and locked down," Dave announced, leaning back in his chair with satisfaction. "Chain of custody restored and bulletproof." I stared at the notification, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. For the first time in weeks, I had concrete proof I wasn't losing my mind. But seeing the evidence laid out so clearly, my wife and partner plotting my death, made the betrayal impossibly real. "You okay?" Dave asked, studying my face. "Yeah," I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to me, "just processing." In the distance, sirens wailed, probably heading to an early morning accident on the highway. The sound snapped me back to reality, reminding me that our clock was still ticking. "We've got the evidence," I said, straightening my shoulders. "Now we need to set the trap." 2 days before our insurance exams, I sat in my office watching the second-hand tick around my desk clock. My heart wasn't racing anymore. I'd stopped taking the tainted pills, but tension knotted my shoulders as I rehearsed the plan one final time. "You ready for this?" Dave asked from the doorway. I nodded, straightening my tie. "As ready as I'll ever be." "The AG's people are already in position. 4 agents, all looking like they belong in an accounting firm." He checked his watch. "Conference rooms wired, audio, video, the works. And the notary? Real deal. State certified, briefed on procedure only. She thinks it's a routine shareholder agreement." I'd spent 12 years building Aldridge and Associates from nothing but a card table in my garage and a second-hand calculator. Now I was gambling it all on one carefully orchestrated meeting. If this went wrong, I'd lose everything I'd worked for, and possibly my life. "Remember," Dave said, "let them lead the conversation. The more they talk, the more rope they give us." "Got it." I stood, smoothing my jacket. "How do I look?" Dave's expression softened. "Like a man about to take back what's his." The walk to our conference room felt like crossing a tightrope. Through the glass walls, I could see 3 people I'd never met before, dressed in business casual, arranging papers and laptops. Our clerks, actually investigators from the Attorney General's office. They nodded professionally as I entered. "Mr. Aldridge," one said, extending her hand. "Everything's prepared as requested." I settled into my usual chair at the head of the table, feeling the weight of hidden cameras tracking my movements. 15 minutes early, as planned. I wanted to be seated when they arrived. The first text came from our receptionist. "Mrs. Aldridge just parked, coming up now." The second followed moments later. Mr. Langford arrived, both heading to conference room. I took a deep breath, focusing on the manila folders arranged before me. Each contained copies of the documents we'd recovered. The poison purchase records, the forged transfer papers, the digital screenshots of their planning sessions. None would be revealed yet. Today was about getting them comfortable enough to incriminate themselves. I heard Lydia's laugh first, that practiced social chime she used when wanting to charm, then Philip's deeper response, followed by the click of Lydia's heels on the hardwood hallway. They entered together, a power couple ready to claim their prize. Lydia wore her signature white blazer, crisp and spotless, auburn hair falling in perfect waves. Philip, in his charcoal suit and blue tie, looked every inch the successful investment advisor. Both carried leather portfolios. "Michael," Lydia said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Right on time." "Always," I replied, gesturing to the chairs across from me. Philip set his portfolio on the table with a confident thump. "I brought the final transfer documents as discussed. Just need signatures and we can put this unfortunate situation behind us." I nodded toward the woman at the end of the table. "This is Ms. Ramirez, our notary for today's proceedings." The notary, the only non-agent in the room besides us, smiled professionally. "I'll need to see identification from all parties before we proceed." While everyone produced their IDs, I caught Lydia studying me, searching for signs of weakness, probably, or symptoms of increased digitalis poisoning. I'd made sure to look slightly pale, slightly fatigued, let her think her plan was working. "And these other folks?" Philip asked, nodding toward the clerks. "Administrative support," I explained. "Standard for shareholder transitions of this magnitude." Lydia's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "I wasn't aware we needed an audience. Just following corporate governance," I said mildly. "You understand?" The next 20 minutes unfolded with excruciating precision. Documents were reviewed, terms discussed. The agents posing as clerks took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions that were designed to elicit specific responses about intent and timing. I signed nothing, just listened as Philip explained how my declining health necessitated this transfer, how Lydia's spousal rights aligned with his expertise would preserve the firm's legacy, and the transfer would be effective immediately, one agent asked innocently. "Upon verification of certain conditions," Philip replied smoothly. "As outlined in Section 4. My death." He meant upon verification of my death. "I think we have enough to proceed," I finally said, nodding to the agents. "Would you mind making copies of everything for our records?" The three clerks gathered the documents and laptops. "Of course. We'll be right back." As they filed out, I heard the distinctive click of the outer door locking behind them. Lydia noticed it too. Her head turned slightly at the sound. "Michael," she said, voice honey-sweet but eyes calculating. "Is everything all right? You seem different today." "Do I?" I asked, watching her carefully. Philip leaned forward. "If you're having second thoughts—" "No second thoughts," I interrupted. "Just making sure everything's in order." A soft mechanical whir drew Lydia's attention upward. One of the hidden cameras had pivoted, its lens now directly focused on her face. Her perfectly shaped eyebrow arched in sudden realization. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as our eyes met across the table. The door reopened, but instead of the clerks returning, a stern-faced woman in a tailored navy suit entered. The three agents followed, positioning themselves strategically around the room. "Good afternoon," the woman said, placing her credentials on the table. "I'm Assistant Attorney General Monica Reeves. This meeting is now part of an official investigation." Lydia's eyes widened for a split second before her composure returned. "Investigation? There must be some mistake." Philip laughed, a confident, dismissive sound. "Michael, what is this?" Some desperate ploy to hold on to the firm. I kept my voice steady. No ploy, just accountability. AAG Reeves nodded to one of the agents, who activated the wall-mounted display screen. Mrs. Collins Aldridge, Mr. Langford, we have evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and attempted homicide through poisoning. Lydia's laugh was perfect, musical, incredulous, just the right touch of offense. This is absurd. Michael's been having health issues. Paranoia can be a symptom of certain medications. I'm perfectly clear-headed, I said, and perfectly healthy when not being poisoned. Philip leaned back, radiating calm authority. Whatever you think you have, emails, recordings, it's either misinterpreted or fabricated. We're here for a legitimate business transaction, nothing more. Digital evidence can be manipulated, Lydia added smoothly. Everyone knows that. I almost admired their confidence. Almost. That's why we didn't rely solely on digital evidence, I said, sliding a leather-bound book across the table. This is the continuous notarization log from the Anderson County Clerk's office. AAG Reeves picked it up. This log records an unbroken chain of custody for all surveillance footage and evidence collected in this case, verified by county officials at 24-hour intervals. Lydia's smile didn't waver, but her fingers tightened around her pen. Additionally, I continued, we have testimony from 2 independent laboratories confirming digitalis in both my food samples and in the altered medication found in my prescription bottle. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Philip's face. This is... Play the video, I said quietly. The agent at the computer nodded, and the screen filled with crystal-clear footage from my kitchen, date and timestamp visible in the corner. Lydia at the counter, carefully measuring powder into my soup bowl. The camera zoomed in as she returned a silver vial to her pocket. The footage cut to our home office. Lydia and Philip hunched over documents, Philip's hand guiding a pen over what was clearly my signature. Their voices came through with perfect clarity. Once the medical examiner confirms heart failure, this transfer activates automatically, Philip was saying. 48 hours later, we'll have controlling interest. And the life insurance? Lydia asked. Separate matter, straight to your personal account. I remembered the cold that had washed over me when Dave first showed me this footage. Now, watching Lydia and Philip see themselves exposed, I felt nothing but a grim satisfaction. The video continued, more scenes of planning, more evidence of their methodical betrayal. Each clip was punctuated by the notary's seal and signature in the log, marking an unbroken chain of authentication. When the screen finally went dark, the silence in the room was absolute. That's not real," Lydia finally stammered, her composure cracking. "That's not what happened." "We have the original vial with your fingerprints," AG Reeves said calmly. "We have the forged documents with Mr. Langford's handwriting confirmed by experts. We have your digital communications planning this conspiracy." Philip's lawyer face emerged. "We need to speak with our attorneys before—" "You'll have that opportunity," Reeves interrupted. "Right now, we're placing you both under arrest." Lydia turned to me, eyes suddenly wide and pleading. "Michael, you can't believe I would actually save it," I said quietly. "I watched you switch our bowls. I saw your face when you thought I was dying by degrees." One of the agents moved forward, placing a small metal case on the table. He flipped it open, revealing 2 sets of handcuffs. Lydia's perfectly composed smile, the one that had greeted clients and charmed our social circle for years, finally collapsed completely. Her lips trembled as she stared at the handcuffs, the reality of her situation sinking in. The metallic click as the agent lifted the first pair seemed to echo in the suddenly silent room. A week crawled by in a blur of statements, depositions, and evidence reviews. I'd barely slept, running on coffee and the strange energy that comes from finally seeing justice in motion. The Anderson County Courthouse steps were packed with reporters when I arrived that morning. Word had leaked about the charges being formally filed. Dave met me at the side entrance, his retired cop badge still opening doors. "You ready for this?" he asked, squeezing my shoulder. "Been ready for 7 days," I said. "Hell, been ready since I switched those soup bowls." The courtroom felt smaller than I remembered, maybe because of all the bodies crammed inside. Local reporters filled the back row. Our small town hadn't seen a case this sensational in decades. When they brought Lydia in, I barely recognized her. Gone was the crisp white blazer and perfect auburn waves. Her prison jumpsuit hung loose, her hair pulled back severely. Only her eyes remained unchanged, calculating, watching for any advantage. Philip entered separately, still managing to look polished despite his circumstances. The confident stride was gone, though, his shoulders hunched forward like he was bracing against a cold wind. "All rise," called the bailiff. Judge Marlene Henson took her seat, adjusted her glasses, and got straight to business. The state of Indiana versus Lydia Collins Aldridge and Philip Langford. The charges are as follows. Her voice was clear and methodical as she read through the list. Felony fraud, conspiracy, attempted homicide by poisoning for Lydia, securities violations, forgery, and conspiracy charges for Philip. The words hung in the air, making real what had previously lived only in nightmares and evidence folders. I watched Lydia's face as each charge was read. Her jaw tightened, a muscle jumping near her temple. The woman who'd kissed my cheek while planning my funeral was finally facing consequences. "How do the defendants plead?" Judge Henson asked. "Not guilty, Your Honor," they answered in practiced unison. Of course, I'd expected nothing less. The proceedings moved quickly after that. Bail was denied for Lydia due to the severity of the poisoning charges. Philip received a bail amount so steep even his tailored suits couldn't hide his flinch. Outside the courtroom, my attorney pulled me aside. "The Securities Commission just voted. Langford's brokerage license is officially revoked." "And the firm?" I asked, my voice tight. "The board emergency meeting concluded 20 minutes ago. They've unanimously voided the transfer documents based on proven forgery. Your majority stake is secure, Michael." Relief washed through me, making my knees weak. The firm I'd built from nothing, the legacy I'd nearly lost, was safe. The people who depended on me for their livelihoods wouldn't suffer for Lydia and Philip's greed. Remember when you were a kid and finally beat that impossible level in a video game? That rush of victory after weeks of frustration. This felt like that, only 1,000 times more intense. "There's more," my attorney continued. "The court approved our petition to freeze Lydia's assets pending trial. The forensic accountants found evidence she's been siphoning money for months." I nodded, thinking of the unexplained credit gaps I'd noticed, the first warning signs I'd ignored. "What happens to the house?" I asked. "Since it's jointly owned, you retain possession for now. But Michael?" He lowered his voice. "You might want to prepare yourself. The media has the footage." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with notifications. Local news alerts, text messages, even an email from my mother asking if what she'd just seen on television was real. The courthouse steps were a circus when I finally emerged. Camera flashes popped like summer lightning, voices shouting questions from every direction. I squinted against the brightness, feeling exposed and strangely vulnerable despite winning. "Mr. Aldridge, how does it feel knowing your wife tried to poison you? Did you suspect your business partner was involved? What happens to Aldridge and Associates now?" I raised a hand, asking for quiet. "I'll only say this once. I trusted two people with everything I had. One was my wife, the other my business partner. They betrayed that trust in the worst possible way, but they failed because the truth has a way of surfacing." A commotion at the side entrance drew all attention. Deputies were escorting Lydia toward a transport van. Her eyes found mine across the crowd, narrowed with pure hatred. "This isn't over," she called out, voice barely audible over the shouted questions. "You'll regret." Whatever threat she meant to deliver was lost, as reporters surged forward. Microphones extended, questions overlapping into unintelligible noise. The deputies hurried her along, and the last I saw was the flash of handcuffs catching sunlight before the van door slammed shut. Dave appeared at my elbow. "Let's get you out of here." As we pushed through the crowd, a reporter thrust a microphone toward me. "Mr. Aldridge, Channel 7 News. Our viewers want to know, what will you do now?" I paused, considering the question. What would I do now? The betrayal, the investigation, the legal battle. It had consumed every waking moment for weeks. I hadn't thought beyond survival and justice. Now, I said, surprising myself with a small smile. Now I get back to living. 3 months later, I pulled into the parking lot of Aldridge & Associates and cut the engine. For a moment, I just sat there, hands resting on the smooth wooden steering wheel of my '69 Mustang. The deep blue paint job gleamed in the spring sunshine, not a scratch to be seen. 3 coats of wax will do that for you. Restoring this beauty had been my weekend therapy since the trial. Every hour spent sanding rust, rebuilding the carburetor, or hunting down original chrome trim had been an hour not spent dwelling on betrayal. The car had waited in my garage for 15 years while I built the business, put off for someday. Turns out, someday was now. I revved the engine once, letting the deep rumble echo across the parking lot. Through the glass front of the building, I caught several employees peering out, smiling and giving thumbs up. Marcy from Accounts Payable even did a little dance. I waved back, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the spring sunshine. The last quarter had been our best ever. Turns out, when news broke about Philip's fraud attempt, clients flocked to us, partly out of morbid curiosity, I suppose, but mostly because honesty suddenly seemed like a valuable commodity in financial services. Who knew? I checked my watch. Still 30 minutes before my first appointment. Perfect time for a quick drive. Pulling out onto Main Street, I rolled down the windows and let the breeze ruffle my hair. The smell of fresh-cut grass from the town square mixed with the scent of leather seats. My heart felt lighter than it had in years. The road along the river was empty this time of morning. I opened her up a little, feeling the V8's power surge as the scenery blurred. Have you ever had that moment when you suddenly realize you're happy? Not just okay, not just getting by, but genuinely happy. It hit me right there on that stretch of asphalt. Lydia was serving 3 to 5 years for attempted poisoning and fraud. The DA had pushed for more, but her lawyer had worked some magic. Still, the thought of her in prison blues instead of her crisp white blazers gave me no joy. Just closure. You reap what you sow, my father used to say while planting corn. He'd been right about more things than I gave him credit for. Philip had avoided jail time by turning state's evidence against Lydia, but his punishment came in different forms. His brokerage license revoked, reputation in tatters. He'd filed for bankruptcy last month. Last I heard, he was trying to sell timeshares in Florida. The Rolex was long gone. I pulled over at my favorite spot, a small bluff overlooking the town and river. Killing the engine, I stepped out and leaned against the warm hood. From here, you could see everything. The courthouse dome, church spires, the bridge spanning the water, and yes, the roof of my office building. The town I'd chosen, the life I'd built. The morning sun caught the Mustang's side mirror, reflecting a bright slash across the horizon. I ran my hand along the fender, feeling the smooth metal under my palm. Dave had helped me with the restoration, cursing and laughing as we wrestled with rusted bolts and misaligned panels. "Why this car?" he'd asked one night, both of us covered in grease and drinking beer in my garage. My dad had one just like it, I'd told him. Sold it to pay for my first semester of college. Said education was more important than steel and rubber. What I didn't say was how the car represented everything I'd put off while building my practice, while trying to make Lydia happy. All the some days I'd deferred. The breeze picked up, carrying the scent of flowering trees and damp earth. Spring in Indiana, nothing quite like it. I breathed deeply, feeling my lungs expand. My heart beat steady and strong. No more digitalis, no more betrayal. My phone buzzed, a text from Dave. Lunch later, celebratory burgers at Mac's. I smiled and typed back, "You're on, noon?" Simple pleasures, real friendship, the kind of loyalty you can count on. I took one more look at the view before climbing back into the driver's seat. The leather creaked comfortingly as I settled in. Turning the key, I felt the engine rumble to life, a mechanical purr that vibrated through the floorboards and up my spine. As I pulled back onto the river road, heading toward the office and my waiting clients, a thought crystallized, something worth remembering, worth passing on. Never poison loyalty. It revives and exposes you. Words to live by, words I'd earned the hard way. I pressed the accelerator, and the Mustang responded eagerly, carrying me forward into whatever came next.